So what's easier to cut?
So is this a boy or a girl? What do you think?
Boy.
Boy. Okay, good job. I would agree.
Oh, they're not funny colored.
Okay, so this is what tissue looks like when it's fresh. So what's this?
Liver.
Liver, okay.
Liver.
Here you can see this is the stomach.
Smells like the ocean.
It does smell kind of oceany. Okay, stomach, what's this thing here?
Spleen.
Spleen, okay. Isn't it? Yeah. What's
so much
this right
prettier.
here?
Ventral pancreas.
Pancreas.
That's pancreas. That is the ventral lobe of the pancreas. And then if we flip this. It's much harder to manipulate. It's all kind of slippery. Let's put that. There is the dorsal lobe of the pancreas. Do you see that?
And then in
And
between
there's the isthmus connecting them. I mean, as if to this fairly. Oops, I missed a spot there. You can see here that digitiform gland or rectal glands. Okay. And then I'll just point out the mesenteries, and this is probably a good time to do mesenteries. This is a really nice vision because you can see how nice and slippery and shiny they are. All the membranes. But ooh, what's that? Just testis. Yeah, that's testis.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a sexually mature male shark for sure. You can see, look at the
Kidneys.
ductus deferens running along the kidney there. Do you see that? It's very well developed. Videographer here. Paparazzi, can't keep them away. So here's the body cavity, the coelom. And so if I'm touching this shiny membrane on the inside of the body wall, what is that?
Parietal
That's
serosa.
right.
That's the parietal serosa, exactly. Okay, so what if I wanted to touch visceral serosa? What would I have to touch?
The organs.
Exactly. So if I'm touching the outside of the liver, the outside of the intestine, or the stomach, that's all visceral serosa. And then you can see that the gut tube is connected to the dorsal body wall by this membrane, and that would be
Dorsal mesentery.
the mesentery, or in particular, dorsal mesentery. Exactly. Okay. Cool. Let's see.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Was it bled, or does it just not have that much blood?
I don't believe this guy was bled, so there's just not that much blood. I mean, there's a little,
Yeah.
but nothing too serious. We can find out when we cut into here, because we haven't really cut into the vessels at all yet. Okay, so what else do we want to do? Mesenteries, abdominal pore. Okay. Abdominal pore. So, did you guys look for the abdominal pore in your guys? No? In sharks, there's a place where there's actually a communication between the, there we go, abdominal pore, between the pleuroperitoneal cavity and the external world
Right.
through the cloaca. It's called the abdominal pore. That's where this probe is going through right here, okay, which is kind of cool. And it's not clear quite what the functional significance of that is, how much actual exchange of the peritoneal fluid with the external world happens. Okay, just looking at my list. Cloaca, I think everyone knows. Okay, so let's see how much. Do you want to do this on here? Because I can do it either way. Yeah, on the fresh guys
All
side?
right.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's just do it.
We'll see how much we can do here, and then I can look at those guys if we need to. So, liver, we've identified. The bile duct runs from the liver to the gut, and in particular, it seems like kind of a funny place to start, but if you look in this membrane here that's connecting liver to gut, and look for something running along that's kind of greenish. Is that at all greenish? No, not really.
really.
Brownish,
No.
Pinkish.
pinkish.
Fleshy.
That is the. Just to make sure I'm actually looking at the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is the bile duct right there. I don't know why it's not greenish, but that is it. Okay. So that's carrying bile from the liver down into the gut. So liver, bile duct. I guess I'll hold off on the membranes for now. I'll try to follow my sequence.
It's
they're
out of
just
memory.
Out of memory? That happens to me. Let me just go ahead and open up the pharynx on this guy as well.
This kind of thing's tough to chew.
Get out.
I'm gonna be cracking jokes all
Get
day.
out.
I need better scissors. Okay.
This is a great feel I'm getting. Oh gosh.
This is actually kind of harder to cut when it's fresh. Strangely enough.
Grosser.
It's grosser.
Getting a completely
Bloodier,
action
that's for
shot.
sure.
It looks like he's screaming.
Oh my god. I would be screaming too.
Yeah. I feel like I need to just go in with the scalpel. The scissors are just not doing it. Oh, there's some blood.
Ah!
Yeah, I just went into one of the sinuses there. That's the posterior cardinal sinus.
Reminds me of. Oh, nice.
Ah, there we go.
Nice.
You like the noise?
No, I just saw the whole blood coming out.
Blood.
Isn't that lovely?
Sorry, I'm a weirdo.
Happy morning, everybody.
Okay.
I wish I was a vampire. I would eat.
pomegranate juice.
I just wanted to open up the gut a little bit more here so we can see better what's going on.
Cranberry juice.
Doesn't it look like you can put, like, that can be out of a pie? Like a cherry pie?
Let's not go there.
Pomegranate juice.
This one is all kind of coagulating now. Actually, does someone have a free hand? Do you want to just grab me a paper towel?
Oh, you got it.
One or two. That's good. I'm just going to kind of sponge him out a little bit so we can see better what's going on. It's kind of goopity.
Talk about a bad nosebleed.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, it's kind of unattractive, but still, we'll see. Okay,
Cool.
so
See the gill rakers.
Yeah.
here's the pharynx, and we can lead back from the pharynx. This is then esophagus, where you see those papillae appear. And if we continue back, I'm going to cut open the stomach, even though I really probably shouldn't. I'm going to smell that, but we'll see.
Is there a fishy in there?
There's something in there.
There's a fish. It looks like kind of
So cool.
Is that
like an eel-like fish.
Yeah.
Gunnel? Yeah, I think
Oh
it is
my gosh,
probably a
it's
gunnel.
cool.
It's so nice to you.
That's so cool.
Partially digested. You can see the vertebral column on this one.
That's cool.
Okay, so
Delicious.
yes, it's a little more goop. Definitely
Fish
goop,
sticks.
goopier. So this is a pharynx, then esophagus, then the stomach, and you can see the folds lining the stomach. So it's the goop lining the stomach. What are these folds called lining the stomach?
Ring.
Okay, just check it the stomach comes down like this, and it has basically a J shape in the shark, so it comes down all the way like this, and then it makes a big bend around and comes up to here, and right about here is the junction of the stomach with the duodenum, and this is the pylorus, this opening from the stomach into the duodenum. The region of the stomach right before that is the pyloric region of the stomach. The main part of the stomach is the body, and then the cranial end of it is called the cardiac region of the stomach because it's towards the heart. Stomach leads down into this very short duodenum that then connects to the intestine, the valvular intestine, sometimes called, or spiral intestine.
Like a waterbed.
It's like a
Um,
big grub, you know. something
The
very-
duodenum is part
It
of the
reminds me
small
of Lion
intestine,
King
but
when
this,
they're eating the
this is
bug.
called the
Oh.
spiral intestine or valvular intestine.
It looks like something Bear Grylls would eat.
And
Yeah.
these lines that you see along there are the spiral valve that wraps around internally in a spiral and basically increases surface area. So it slows down the food as it's passing through, increases surface area for absorption.
Cool.
And spleen, we've already seen. It's right here, hanging off the stomach. And pancreas also we already saw.
So that's
And then digitiform gland. Did I get down far enough? There it is. There's my digitiform gland. Is this little guy here also called the rectal gland?
Unique to sharks.
And that's unique to sharks, and it's a salt excreting organ. So sharks have a lower concentration of salt in their bodies than the surrounding seawater. So they're basically constantly absorbing salts, and they have to get rid of them, and they secrete them into the gut using this rectal gland.
Don't they taste salty?
They taste, I don't know, they keep a lot of urea in their body. They build up urea, so they're actually isosmotic with the seawater because they're holding so much urea. And I've been told they taste kind of urea if you don't like wash the urea out. You have to kind of suck it out of them before cooking. I've never really noticed them being salty.
Okay.
Okay, good. Oh, and gonad, testis or ovary, there's testis, which we saw already, and of course one on each side,
Oh,
right and left testis. And he's a very well-developed guy. Okay, so mesenteries. We sort of looked at them generally. The dorsal mesentery, the mesentery going to the gut from the dorsal body wall, has different regions depending on what it's hooked onto. So if we grab the stomach here, pull it away from the dorsal body wall, we see there's a mesentery going to the stomach, and that's called the greater omentum,
Greater
also
omentum.
called the mesogaster. Gaster meaning stomach. I prefer greater omentum, that's what it's called. There's a part of the dorsal mesentery running between the stomach and the spleen called the gastrosplenic ligament, right there. There's the part that goes to the intestine here, and that is called the mesentery proper, or just the mesentery, which is kind of a stupid name, but that's what it's called. It's confusing to have something called the mesentery as opposed to all the other mesenteries that are called something else. But that's it there. There's a mesocolon, which is the mesentery going to the digitiform or rectal gland here. So there's this little mesentery here that's connecting it to the dorsal body wall. And those are all parts of the dorsal mesentery. Okay. Then we have ventral mesentery. So dorsal mesentery goes to the dorsal body wall. Ventral mesentery goes from the gut to the ventral body wall, which we've cut open inconveniently enough. But if you look at the little diagram on the board, the one on the right, you'll see that the liver kind of sits in the middle of the ventral mesentery, and it's connected to the stomach by the lesser omentum, and to the body wall by the falciform ligament. So if we look, here is liver, here is stomach. So is there something connecting them? Right here. Aha, there is. This connection is ventral mesentery between the liver and stomach, and duodenum actually, and this is the lesser omentum.
So lesser omentum is also the bile duct.
The bile duct runs through the lesser omentum, carrying bile from the liver and gallbladder down to the gut. There's also blood vessels that come from the gut, the hepatic portal vein, running up through the lesser omentum, going to the liver. Okay, so there's things that run back and forth through that lesser omentum, which is really why it's there. And let's see if I can do this in here. So this also is called in the shark the hepatogastroduodenal ligament, and there's one part of it that goes to the stomach, and that's technically the hepatogastric ligament, and one part here that goes to the duodenum, and that's the hepatoduodenal ligament, and it's really kind of like two different folds of the same structure going to those two regions. Okay. So we'll get back to them when we do blood vessels, because we'll have to kind of revisit that. Then the other part of this is the falciform ligament, the other part of the ventral mesentery. And I'm not sure how well we're going to see that on this shark that I just ripped open. You may have to look at one of the preserved animals. It's basically right in here. You can see like a little bit of mesentery that ran up to the ventral body wall. But we'll look at it in the fixed animals in a second. See it better. Okay. Subsidiary mesenteries: Mesorchium, Mesodarium, Mesotubarium. Okay, so this is a boy shark, so it's not going to have a Mesovarium or a Mesotubarium because it doesn't have ovaries or oviducts, but it does have a Mesorchium. So orchis, the root means testis, so the Mesorchium is the mesentery of the testis. So, does that make sense? Okay. It's an orchiectomy. So many people have their testes removed. It's orchiectomy.
How?
Yeah, it's painful to think of. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, esophagus, papillae, stomach, rugae, greater and lesser curvatures of the stomach we didn't talk about. And those would probably be easier to see on one of the preserved animals, but that's okay. We can look at them here. If you look at the stomach, overall, it's got this shape that's kind of a J. It starts here and comes down and then bends around like this. And the outer part of the curve where it's bending around is called the greater curvature. The inner side of it here is the lesser curvature. And the greater curvature is where the spleen is connected by that gastrosplenic ligament. The lesser curvature connects to the lesser omentum. Liver, lobes. Yeah, liver has lobes.
Gallbladder.
There is a gallbladder, which
It's like right there.
right in here, if I can grab it, right there is the gallbladder. Okay, and the shark's kind of interesting. There's actually some tissue of the liver coming down along there, but if I cut this open, I can do this like that. Where'd my probe go? It's probably hiding under here somewhere.
Right there.
Ah, look at this. Just to show you if you can get a probe in it. There's a sac, and that's the actual gallbladder. And the gallbladder, what does it do?
Stores bile.
Stores bile, exactly. So bile is made by the liver, and then it's just stored in the gallbladder until it's needed. So there's the gallbladder.
And what I forgot, what exactly does bile do? Does it just break down harsh?
Bile contains two things. It contains bilirubin, which is a breakdown product of hemoglobin, and it's basically just a waste product of the liver. It's involved in recycling red blood cells,
Okay.
and that's what gives it the green color. But then it also contains bile salts, which act to emulsify fats, break them up into smaller little droplets so that enzymes can act better on the fats and help digest them.
Okay.
So it's typically well developed, the gallbladder, in animals that eat a lot of fatty meals like carnivores, and much more poorly developed, if at all, in herbivores, because they usually don't have such fatty diets. Okay, then bile duct we already looked for. Okay, pericardial cavity, I've not really cut open in here, and I think I'll just hold off. We can look at all that on one of the other sharks. Oral cavity and pharynx, we kind of have seen. In sharks, it's very hard to define the boundary between the oral cavity and the pharynx. Oral cavity is kind of here, and then when you get back into where there's a spiracle, from here back is pharynx, but it's not a really sharp distinction to be made. Primary tongue, that's actually a good thing to look at on this fresh guy, because it's harder to tell in the preserved ones. But if you look at the floor of the mouth here, you can feel there's like something solid in there, and this thing that kind of sticks up from the floor of the mouth, and that's called the primary tongue, because it's basically just the base of all the branchial arches. So this is basihyal in there, and all the basal branchials coming down, and that's the primary tongue. there's no flesh to it. There's no muscle there, and that's why it's called the primary tongue. Secondary tongues are like what you find in us, where there's muscle fibers developed and something that can actually move around.
So do we still have the primary? Like.
Well, there's still a
in-
hyoid in there, but
hyoid,
then
yeah.
there's just all this muscle
And then all
stuff.
muscle, okay.
And embryonically, the primary tongue develops first, and then the secondary kind of develops from there. Spiracle, I think everyone's pretty familiar with the spiracle by now. Internal gill slits are here. Those are guarded by the gill rakers, and it's really a nice view to be able to see them from the inside like this. Basically keeps fish from swimming out through the gill slits after the shark swallows them.
Makes sense. That would be needed.
Each of these internal gill slits leads into a branchial pouch. And that's what we've cut open here. So you can look, maybe you look on this side a little more easily. This space in here is a branchial pouch that the gill slit is leading into. And inside of each branchial pouch, and it's a little hard to see because of all this stuff, but you can see the gills, the actual gill lamellae there. They're back. These are the gill lamellae, and technically the branchial pouch goes out to the end of the gill lamellae, and then this little area lateral to where the gill lamellae are is the parabranchial chamber, that little space to the outside of the branchial pouch. Okay. And those parabranchial chambers then lead to the external gill slits, which you've already seen many times. You see them better on the other side of the shark, where you can actually put a rope in there. And it's really, the tissue is just so different in these fresh guys. It's just so floppity by comparison to the way it is in ours. You can see how well those seal when they close them. Floppity is a weird word. Interbranchial septum. Okay. So if we look at each gill arch here, cartilaginous gill arch, there's this tissue associated with it that separates one gill pouch from the next gill pouch, and that would be called the interbranchial septum. Okay, yes. So that's the interbranchial septum there that I'm grabbing, and that's what the gill lamellae are on. And the gill lamellae that we see are the primary lamellae. Secondary lamellae are microscopic, and you can't really see them, but they run at right angles along all those primary lamellae, increasing surface area. Holobranchs and hemibranchs, do people know what those are? Holobranch. If you look at some of these gill arches, you'll see that they have gills on both sides of the interbranchial septum, so that would be called a holobranch, because it's a gill arch with two sets of gills, one on either side. A hemibranch would be, for example, this most caudal gill arch, which has gills present only on one side, because there's no other side to it. So that would be a hemibranch. Okay. And likewise, this most rostral one, there's no gill slit in front of the first gill slit, there's just the spiracle, so this is also a hemibranch there. A pseudobranch. What's a pseudobranch?
Does it
A fake gill. Right, so the
Like a
pseudobranch is associated with the spiracle. Okay. And here's the spiracle, and there's a valve associated with the spiracle that can close the spiracle. Notice if I probe here, the probe doesn't go in. That's just a little blind pouch. Here's the actual hole of the spiracle. And there's this little flap valve there that can close the spiracle. It's called the spiracular valve. And if you look deep into the spiracle, and I'm not sure how well you can see that, you'll see little folds on the wall there of the spiracle, and that's the pseudobranch. It's basically a fake gill on the inside of the spiracle. Can you see that at all?
No,
Yeah?
I didn't see anything.
It looks kind of white, like it's a little whitish membrane with ridges.
Oh.
You guys can see that. Yeah, sort of, kind of. No.
This is like a whole.
It's just a matter of getting the right view in there.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Stuff dripping out of its nose.
It's dripping out of its nose.
Ew.
Its mouth.
Here's
kind of-
tissue.
Oh, it's a little messy. That's why I put a bag there. Okay, so no branchial arch. Gill rays, do you guys remember gill rays? Those are the little cartilage extensions that go out into the interbranchial septum off of the gill arch. Okay, and we're not going to see that on here. Branchial adductor muscle, interbranchial muscle, again, we're going to have our time seeing that here. And then the branchial arteries also will have our time seeing in this guy. Okay, it's pretty good. Okay. Ouch. Poked him. Okay, so let me, what am I going to do with this thing? I'm going to wrap him up for the moment.
You're on your own now.
And
Excuse me.
let's just take a look at a couple of other things that we couldn't see well on this guy. We can look at on the preserved animals. Okay, we'll start with this one, which is also a male, but a much younger male, much more poorly developed. Okay. Looks pretty different when it's preserved, but basically all the same parts are there.
It's all stiff.
It's all stiff. Actually, I mean, they're kind of less goopy and easier to work with when they're clear like this. We're looking at the interbranchial septum here. I'll just point out that usually on these guys, if you look carefully, and this is something somebody else other than me is going to have to look for because I can't see the red, but you'll often see the efferent branchial arteries in the interbranchial septum as two little red dots. Do you see any red in there?
Other than the hole.
I mean, right. Is it like grouped together?
Yeah.
I don't know, that whole thing is red.
Yeah.
Is it all just red from
It's
the
all
injection?
red.
Yeah.
Okay. No, right here. Take a look right. No, maybe not. Okay. Well, maybe you look on Robin's. Were you able to see those, Robin, on your driving?
I didn't get that right.
Okay, well, we'll find out. Okay, what else did we not see? Oh, the pericardial cavity. Did that get opened up on this? Oh, you
Just
haven't
the cavity in between.
gotten in there yet. So, did we get in there? Yes, we'll get there on this one. Okay, so I'm not sure then that there was anything else we needed to see on this boy that we didn't already see on the us. Now let's switch over to the girl. Excuse me. Okay. So this being a girl, she has girl parts.
Ew.
So, good one. These would be the ovaries, okay, which are basically up in the same region that the testes are in the male, up the cranial end of the pleuroperitoneal cavity. And then associated with the ovaries is a mesentery, which would be called the
Mesovarium.
mesovarium. Running by the ovary, not actually connected to it, but just running by it, is this tube, and that's the oviduct. And the oviduct is actually a good chart because it's fairly well developed. You can see that the oviduct is expanded in this region here into kind of a sac-like area, and that's called the shell gland, and that's where the actual eggshell gets deposited around the egg. It's also called the nidamental gland. Does it say nidamental gland or shell gland? Maybe you haven't even gotten there yet. Maybe we'll get there at the reproductive chapter, but I'll point out anyways. This is the oviduct then running down, and then it expands here, and this is the uterus region. And there's one on each side, oviduct and uterus on each side. Okay, and then that's going to connect into the cloaca. You'll notice there's a mesentery of the oviduct itself, and that's called the mesotubarium. So that's here. The oviducts open into, from a common opening at the border of the falciform ligament. So this is something that I really wanted to show on this guy, or gal, I should be more precise. If you stretch the liver out here and look right in this region, you can see this connection with the ventral body wall here. That's the falciform ligament. And I'm not sure, can we see it on this side? Yeah, you can see it on this side, which is good for you. Here's the oviduct running along like this. There's the shell gland or nidamental gland, and then it's continuing like this here. And it comes up and curves around like this and opens right here by this opening where the probe is going in the border of the falciform ligament. And there's a single opening that then splits and goes left and right to the two oviducts. And so basically what happens in these guys, or gals, I'm sorry, so the eggs are ovulated out of the ovary into the body cavity. And then they move up to that opening of the oviduct here in the edge of the falciform ligament and go into that and travel down the oviduct, get the shell put on in the nidamental gland, go down to the uterus and start developing in the uterus. Okay. So it's always really a strange thing to me to think that somehow an egg is going to manage to get up there and go in that little hole, but they do it. And that's normal. Almost all vertebrates ovulate into the body cavity, and then that egg has to get into the opening of the oviducts. Same for us. Only some teleost fishes don't do that, and actually have the oviduct surround the ovary. Okay, so that was one thing I really wanted to make sure you saw. Did everyone get a good view of that? That's pretty cool. And then the other thing was the pericardial cavity, which wasn't open on our other chart. So here's the heart, okay, sitting in this cavity here. That's the pericardial cavity. And just like there's a parietal serosa and a visceral serosa, the lining of the pericardial cavity is called the pericardium, and there's a parietal pericardium here that's lining the wall of the cavity. And then if I touch the actual heart itself, I'm touching
Visceral pericardium.
visceral pericardium, exactly.
Makes sense.
The pericardial cavity is separated from the pleuroperitoneal cavity here by this band of tissue that runs across the body, which is called the transverse septum. Good name for it. And the transverse septum has some very important blood vessels in it. In particular, the posterior cardinal sinuses are coming in there to the common cardinal sinus and draining it back into the sinus venosus. So we're not quite there yet, but I'll just point out so you don't destroy it inadvertently, that if you kind of tug the ventricle away from the transverse septum here, you'll see this very delicate membrane there, and that is the sinus venosus of the heart. Okay. I won't destroy it, don't worry. There is an opening between the pericardial cavity and the pleuroperitoneal cavity, this large cavity, which is often very hard to find, but you can kind of probe for it with a probe. It's called the pleuropericardial canal, and sometimes you can find it by putting a probe in there and feeling around it, just trying not to destroy anything. At the moment, I'm not going to poke around too much more. I don't want to destroy it. But there is actually a connection between the pericardial cavity and the pleuroperitoneal cavity. And I was just going to look on this guy for... Oh, I see. You took a different approach. Don't think there's anything else that we need to look at in particular.